Yeah. Now, last time we spoke, you mentioned that you think the system, the model of local government is broken in New Zealand. Now we've got a new government coming in, that's come in. Have you had much communication with them since they've come in? I know there was a joint briefing that was brought together, but have you had any personal interaction with ministers at all?
Yes, absolutely. So all of the leadership of Hawke's Bay met with the Prime Minister last Friday, and with him, Minister Simeon Brown, who is the Minister of Transport and helpfully the Minister of Local Government as well, and Minister Mark Mitchell, who's Emergency Management and Recovery. We've since had another follow-up meeting with Minister Brown on transport issues. And I've also been to Wellington to meet with Mark Patterson, who is the Minister of Rural Communities, who's really interested in the nuances of how we look after resilience and affordability in the rural landscape in New Zealand in particular. So there's some pretty hefty conversations going on. But look, what we're hearing and what we're seeing is that the financial pressure is on the government books too, as well as the local government books. And we've got a pretty extraordinary situation playing out in front of us right now. And for us, as local government is I suppose, the taker of what government will support us with, there's a bit of weight and uncertainty that we've got to deal with as the new government gets to grips with which levers they're going to pull and where they're going to invest and where they're not.
Because so far it seems like they're cutting things. Is there anything that you worried that you as a council or region has got in plans going forward that they might cut?
So one of the things that I'm concerned about is we've got some particular recovery issues around our Three Waters network. So you might recall that after the cyclone, we had about 5 weeks where Waipawa and Otani didn't have drinking water because the stop bank protecting the Waipawa bore and treatment plant broke and flooded, and it took us quite some time to rebuild that and get it back up and running. We've got, as we negotiated with the Crown around the categorisation of land and the financial package to support that, the Crown would not engage with us on what to support on recovery in those drinking water and Three Waters types assets look like. I'm really worried about where those applications now sit with the new government. We've got the population of nearly half of our district is associated with that drinking water network, and right now it is at quite some extreme risk. And we continue to have those conversations. Really, really important to be a safe and healthy community to get that sorted.
Now, the one thing the Prime Minister was quite impressed with, and he said so, was the way Hawke's Bay as a region came together and presented a briefing and that for the new government. How important is it working together with that Matariki group and the wider leadership group in Hawke's Bay?
Oh, look, it's absolutely vital, actually. What we've found is that a strong, clear and consistent message from the region is so much more helpful in Wellington about how to get around priorities. And I think what I've seen across the leadership of Hawke's Bay, across the councils and across our iwi mana whenua partners as well, is that as a region, we understand where the priorities sit. And it's not about, Central Hawke's Bay campaigning for the attention compared to Hastings. Actually, we know that our communities are connected and we've got to present with what really are the regional priorities. So right now, State Highway 2 to Wairoa is undeniably a regional priority. And that's not because it directly affects my community, but it affects the success of the region. And that makes a very powerful message.
Yeah, but you still believe that it's important to have separate councils. You wouldn't be in favour of any amalgamation or anything. You believe that it's important for your council to be as it is and going forward, just with more support from central government.
I think that, yes, the local identities are important, but I think we need to think carefully about what are the right activities to be delivered and funded at the local level. And our pathway over the last few years on our Hawke's Bay Three Waters model is a really good example of where, yes, there's diverse local needs across the different councils, but when it comes to the funding and operationalising of that larger infrastructure need, it makes sense for us to be working together in a way that that does that as a collective. So I think we're going to see a period of time where there are pretty deep conversations about the right activities to be led and funded at a local level compared to a regional level. And I think that will start to then inform what the right form is for local government when we get function a lot more clear. And I think that the new government's focus on long-term pipelines of infrastructure investment and delivery is probably going to help us navigate that.
And now you've got two local MPs, Catherine Wedd and Mike Butterick. Have you had much communication with them?
Yes, I have. They've been really supportive, and I had spent some time with all candidates standing actually before the election to get them across what the recovery situation looked like for Central Hawke's Bay, what the financial situations look like for the council, and what that meant for the future. And since then, Catherine and Mike have both been in the district, have spent time on a number of issues with them. And as they're getting their feet under the table, actually the teamwork between us and them is important too. They're figuring out how to navigate the government channels. And sometimes we know how to get those things done too. So we're trying to bring them into the team and work together as well.
Good. And any other issues facing Central Hawke's Bay that you'd like to raise?
I think it's important to talk about the wider damage and recovery that's required in a district like Central Hawke's Bay. So from a council perspective, I've already spoken about roading and water, drinking water. But actually in wastewater treatment and in stormwater networks, there's also now considerably more work to do. Our wastewater treatment plants are in a process of upgrade to meet new consent conditions and to move into a completely different treatment arena. But quite a number of them have been directly impacted by flooding, where the river came through, completely flooded through the Waipawa wastewater treatment plant. It has had quite a significant impact on the land area in Takapo, where irrigation to land is very soon to need to get up underway. And same in Pōrangaho, where the wastewater treatment plants were also affected by where the water went. So in terms of that future resilience and building back better, we're in a slightly different space now where we've got to recover from those impacts as well. None of those things are on the radar of what government support looks like because they've all been focused on what does reform and repeal and reform look like. So those are on the radar for us too. Makes it difficult to make short-term decisions about what to do next because it's uncertain. And the other thing is then about the recovery in our primary sector, who have lost many thousands of hectares of land through slips, through flooding, loss of infrastructure, and it's a slow road for some of those farmers to be able to rebuild and get their stock numbers and their crops back up and running. And you think now, particularly our sheep farmers, lamb prices aren't that great this season. And so even the cash flow to continue recovery for those farming businesses is challenging. And we have to take that into consideration as we then prioritise how we get the rest of the recovery going if the wallets and the pockets of our households and our businesses are also severely constrained.